We would do more of these, right? Are you ready? For the weather, yeah. Could have been better, could have been worse. Non-expectation? Official or unofficial? You got a couple weeks ago. Nah, I didn't go that far. We were right in it. We ended up in the mountain. Because the kids, sir, money. We'll give it to y'all at the end of the meeting.
Ready? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for taking time to be with us at this town hall meeting. There are several acknowledgments I'd like to do very briefly this morning, this afternoon. I want to thank staff. Staff came out and worked really hard in pulling this together and setting all the boards up for us and working hard on getting the microphones and the recording equipment set up. So again, thank you, staff, for all the work that you do, not only tonight, but gosh, forever. I want to take a minute to recognize our council members that are here. Council Member Josh Bear, raise your hand. Council Member Bruce Gaynor. Council Member Matt Myers. Thank you all for being here. And what we want to do is talk a little bit about, if I can get the mic adjusted, I'll stand back a little bit, talk a little bit about our proposal for our new public safety building. As you had the opportunity to walk around and take a look at I hope everybody's had a chance to walk around and take a look at all the storyboards, so you can formulate any questions. And let me just throw this out and make sure everybody understands that these are preliminary drawings. Nothing's cut in stone right now. The only thing that's cut in stone is that we want to provide excellent public safety to all of our citizens here in the city of Norcross. We're going to have several presenters here tonight, and I'll introduce them as they come up. I have a few words that I'll share, roughly 6 minutes of preparatory notes that I want to share. But I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. So my notes, I've documented my notes, so I will make sure I stay on time because I want to try to get us out of here by at least by 8:30. I have 6 minutes of scripted notes that I'll just simply read off. And it reads, law enforcement is constantly evolving to meet the needs of today's challenges in public safety. As the landscape of public policing changes over time, many agencies need facilities that can incorporate and accommodate these changes. However, before starting plans for a new facility, there are items to consider to ensure that the new or updated facility will meet our current and future needs. And that's important, meeting not only our current and our future needs. Now, we started this process off several years ago. We originally thought what we would do with the old library is convert that into our new public safety facility. But time has shown us that we've outgrown those original plans. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So the premise is to build relationships with community members and involve them in public safety efforts to strengthen the department's presence and relationship with the community it serves, and to enhance the community's trust in our police agency. There are many ways to implement this philosophy, and we can do that through design, which is one factor that we can use, and it actually plays a critical part in law enforcement agencies' ability to serve its constituents. Several considerations come into play when determining whether a public safety facility promotes our police agency's community engagement initiatives. The following questions can help us to determine and identify changes that can be made to our current and future facilities to transform them into community-friendly buildings. And I want to make sure that sticks into your head that what we're trying to, our focus is to create a community-friendly public safety building. So the following questions can also help to identify changes that can be made to current and future facilities to transform into community-friendly buildings. Question one, is the location accessible to the public? Does the current facility provide spaces to house public events, which can also be used for departmental ceremonies and promotions? Does the lobby create a welcoming and inviting environment so community members feel safe to engage with our officers and our department? Does the lobby have entry procedures and safe spaces that can be used by our community in case of an emergency? Does the building welcome the public, or does it have a fortress look and feel? And lastly, are there spaces within the structure for youth and the community to interact with the department in a positive environment, such as a recreation room? So there's a fine line in design balance required in creating open and inviting spaces for the public while still protecting our officers, our staff, and our citizens that will frequent the building. So with the recent concerns for both officers and citizens, safety is of paramount importance. The following elements can be instrumental in creating a building that is open to the community while maintaining the proper lines of invisible security on site within the building. And they are security controls in the public lobby as well as throughout the building, secure parking for staff that is visually and physically separated by public parking spaces from public parking spaces. We have CCTV entry point at each entry point, as well as sensitive areas throughout the building. Do we have decompression areas for the public as well as the staff? Another consideration when evaluating our facility and planning for future facilities is accreditation. Accreditation standards are generally based on procedures. However, the way a facility is designed can aid or hinder in these procedures. For instance, an agency requires adequate and appropriate space for personnel to conduct their work. Certain areas of the facility are assessed and continually undergo scrutiny of how they protect the interests of the department, its personnel, and the community members interacting within the facility. Those things are very, very important. So as I close out my opening statement, the landscape of policing changes over time, and we know that it has changed over these last few years. Many agencies need facilities that can incorporate and accommodate these changes. And you have to ask these questions, and they help identify if we're headed in the right direction. And I think we are headed in the right direction. Will this building be accessible to the public? Does the current facility provide spaces to house public events, which can also be used for departmental procedures and ceremonies? Does it create a welcoming environment for people coming to our police department, our public safety building? And there are other questions that you may have concerning our direction with that we're headed in with this new public safety building. But keep in mind, all this is for you. We all want to live in safe communities. That's important. I went on a site called SafeWise to see if Norcross was one of the 100 safe cities. And for some reason, I couldn't find that. Maybe I need to look harder. But I believe we are one of the 100 safe cities here in Georgia. And we want to continue to head in that direction and continue to do what we can to keep our community safe. So with that, as a wrap up here, I had one more thing to say. I want to thank our police chief for his over and above efforts. And I have to say that he's worked really hard in ensuring that we have officers, vehicles, and the mechanics in place to keep our city safe, and that's very, very important. So I want to give him a hand. Would y'all please join me in thanking our police chief? So the presenters tonight will be our city manager, Eric Johnson, our police chief, Bill Grogan, building designers from Croft, Earl Smith, and Eric Pettigle. Also on our panel is Maurice Shepard, our clerk of court, and our financial advisor, Edmund Wall of Piper Jeffrey. So at this point, I will turn it over to our city manager, Eric Johnson.
Well, good evening, and thank you for coming out on this nice weather here that we enjoy throughout the winter. So what I'd like to do is first of all, thank you for coming. Let you know that we are streaming this, so it'll be available afterwards. If you run into friends and neighbors that are missed the opportunity tonight, but want the opportunity to hear the discussion and hear the questions and maybe follow up with their questions of their own. This will be available through a YouTube link, so and if you don't have enough fun tonight, you have the opportunity to watch it all over again. But appreciate your coming out this evening to share with us. I want to kind of go through very quickly what are the questions that we should be able to answer for you tonight. You've heard who we have here. We've got a group that can drill down into the details as you think of questions, but the first thing is, why are we recommending the building in the first place? I think probably what I've heard just very recently is a lot of people don't realize we've run out of space in City Hall. We've outgrown that building. We now have to consider where we would put someone if we want to hire someone, because of the fact that we've used storage closets, some of the smallest cubicles I've seen in my career, we've even had interns using conference rooms when no one was around because that was the only place we could park them. But we're a growing city in terms of population, and as you're going to hear tonight, the areas that we're going to talk about in public safety, policing, and court operations unfortunately serve a lot more people than the 18,000 people that currently reside in our city, because we have somewhere in a range of 33,000 unique vehicles. Okay, I'm off by a scale of quite a bit. 46,000 unique vehicles on a daily basis. We have 18,000 people that live here. Not all of them have driver's licenses, but that gives you a sense of, and all you have to do is drive in a road to realize how many people are coming through here that don't live here. So when we talk about court operations and policing, we're dealing with not just the people that live here or the people that work here, but the people that come here for various reasons, and a lot of them are just cutting through town. But so we have a lot of factors driving demand, but we want to talk a little bit about why we need the space. The process we went through to identify space requirements, and that's why we have the individuals from Croft here to join us. We've got a map here that shows the location. The mayor talked about it. We're looking at the former library site at Beaufort Highway at Stevens. Some of the values that we'll assign to the structure, we have a commitment as a community to build LEED certified structures. So just like our brand new library that we paid 47% of the cost for, that the library system built, that's LEED certified. We have a commitment to build LEED certified buildings. I want to talk a little bit about the land assemblage, and you've seen a map over there that shows how we have taken the land that the library is on, and we've acquired some parcels adjacent to it to ensure that a facility like this has the adequate parking to serve all of the needs of that building, including, as the mayor said, when we have community events there. Why the existing former library was found unsuitable, and Croft will answer that question, as the mayor has mentioned. We're going to talk a little bit about how we can pay for this without raising taxes or fees. As people that support the finances of this community, that's got to be one of your questions. And then, as the mayor said, what are the other benefits to the community? One of the benefits is that once we have this type of a facility, we actually have some expansion space within City Hall. And so the various functions that have been constrained trying to fit within City Hall have the opportunity. And we're looking not just for the near term, but we're looking for something that will address needs for decades to come. So that's kind of the types of questions that we hope to answer. We're going to try to fairly quickly go through discussing some of these issues. We'd ask that you hold your questions to the end, and then we'll be glad to take your questions tonight. But I expect that you'll think of some questions as you go home tonight or tomorrow or next week. And so we're happy to respond to your questions as you come up with them. And thanks for coming here tonight. But I'd like, what I'm going to ask is Bill Grogan, our chief, to come up and talk a little bit about some anecdotes of why we understand the lack of space and the implications for service in his department, and then give our court administrator and clerk of court, Maurice Shepard, the same opportunity, just to give you some anecdotal, what are the challenges that we have been facing?
Thank you, Mayor, for the positive comments. I really appreciate that. But you know me, it's not me. In fact, the three guys that are here in the back, and they were walking out, I texted the lieutenant real quick, and I said, hey, ask them to come back in. So this is impromptu. I had no intentions of calling them out. But Lieutenant Beasley, raise your hands, been here forever. How many years? 23 years. So Master Patrol Officer Hernandez, you've been with us 6 plus 2.5, so he's on his 8. And not that I don't love these guys, but Officer Spencer Gilmore, who's part of our crime suppression team. Oh, come this way. They want to see you. As part of our crime suppression team, his focus is on hotels and keeping crimes out of our hotels. But he's one of the ones that's near and dear to my heart because I was able to put him through the police academy, and that's a homegrown police officer. And so, not that these guys aren't great, but it's special. So I wanted to point that out because not to tug on your heartstrings, but when you go to sleep tonight, they're here, right? These three guys right here, they are night shift, and they're here. They're here for you guys. So rest easy because of that. So I won't put you on the spot anymore, but thanks for sticking around. So thanks. So like the mayor and like Eric said, we're busting at the seams. That's just, I'm just going to put it out there. We really are, and we'll continue to provide the best possible service that we can provide with what we've got. But we can do better. I mean, we can do better with more, and I think that's kind of where we're at. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what Eric mentioned, some anecdotes stuff, but this is based on current space that we have and kind of what we're doing. And I'll actually, since they're here, I'll start with our patrol officer room. I measured it myself. It's 262 square feet right now. Our officer workroom where officers can do reports, sergeants can have roll call briefings. It's 262 square feet. You kind of picture what that is in your mind. It's small. In that space, we have one desk that all 4 sergeants, we have 4 patrol shifts, so all 4 sergeants have to use the same desk. So they have one desk for sergeants. We have 2 workstations for police officers to complete complex reports and enter evidence. We have a cabinet with makeshift mailboxes so officers can get subpoenas and other kind of correspondence. We have a cabinet for storage for radio batteries, flashlight chargers, etc. And until about a month ago, we had actually our video warrant room so that an officer doesn't have to go all the way to the judge at the magistrate court. We can actually have a video conference with the judge and get search warrants and arrest warrants that way. Until about a month ago, we actually had that in a separate room. We also had our video monitoring equipment for our interview room in a separate room, but we've had to consolidate. I'll get to that in a second. So now we have our interview monitoring equipment. We have that at a desk in the same room. We have our we have our video warrant computer in that same space, and the dispatch. I'm sorry. So that's our patrol workstation area that we've got right now, and it's difficult. I mean, I think I'm stating the obvious there. We had Maurice Shepard, the court clerk, is also busting at the seams from both a storage standpoint and staffing standpoint. I'll let him talk about that. But he and I were trying to figure out how to get him more space for storage because he's required to. I said I was going to let you speak, and now I'm saying it. But he has to keep a certain number of years worth of citations and records and so forth. And so I gave him that space that I used to have my video warrant interview monitoring and my video, our interview room monitoring. I had to give him that space so he could have enough to be able to comply with state law. And so we're making ends meet, is my point. But it's tough, and I think any extra would be probably out of the question at this point. Just briefly, our dispatch room is about 500 square feet. Our dispatchers are 24/7, 365, so when you call for Norcross Police, you get somebody in a room here, physically in a room, to answer it for you. That room of 500 square feet houses 2 records clerks, 2 full-time records clerks, now 1 temporary part-time. We have 2 to 3 dispatch terminals that have 6 monitors each, various radio terminals, desktop computers. We have an weather alert system for our sirens. We have file cabinets for arrest warrants, and so on and so on and so on. Kind of busting at the seams there. You're getting the trend here. We have another building. It's called, we call it Wingo Building. It's right over here off of Wingo Street. It's a warehouse type of building, and I think we're up to about 12 different functions now that we've got in there. We've had to create space for extra storage for property and evidence. So things with, if there's found property or evidence from a criminal case that's overflowing in our small storage room here in the building, which is at capacity, we have to put it into that space and we store it there. So we, right now, what we have is we have obviously the right side of City Hall. We have folks in there, including myself. We have upstairs in City Hall that's kind of intermingled in with human resources. We have code enforcement. Here in about a week and a half, I'm going to be moving code enforcement over to some office space that we've renovated in the Wingo building. So kind of puts them outside of, under the same roof, which is not a good scenario, but it's kind of where we are. And so the last thing I'll say on that is we're just kind of crunched for space. We have a new mental health clinician. I think a lot of you are aware of that, a co-responder. We're trying to get a second one because the program has been so successful. We've gotten grant money to fund that, but we don't have anywhere to put them, and so that's tough for them to be able to have interviews with their clients and that type of thing. So Eric mentioned why are we here? Why are we doing this? And I think it's just the point is we've gotten to the end as far as space goes and availability of space. So, what do we need? That's kind of where we're at right now. So what we did 2.5 years ago, our prior city engineer, Erica Madsen, and I sat down and we were given the green light from mayor and council at the time to put out an RFQ, a request for quotes, in order to get architectural firms to tell us. We could tell them what we need or what we don't have and what we kind of feel like we need, but they would be able to tell us really what space do you need in a building. And we had 22 firms, it was probably one of the best I've ever heard of. 22 firms actually submitted proposals under that RFQ, and we actually selected as part of the team. I think Tracy, you were on that, I believe. We had a team of people that selected Croft, and that's the 2 gentlemen. If you raise your hands at the end, they'll speak here in just a minute. And so we began working with them on what do we currently have, both from a police only, meaning it's our space only, and then what are the shared spaces? So we may share with Tracy's team, or we may share with the Wingo Street building, or those types of things. Got to put all that together and say, what do we need? I don't want to get into that. I am not an architect, but they've been great with working with us to try and figure out what spaces you need and so forth. I'll let them talk about that. So, one of the things that we don't have now, or several of the things that we don't have now that we stressed, and the mayor kind of mentioned on a safe building. It's not an unsafe building, but we do have people who have started kind of walking around our police cars arbitrarily without any reason, which is their right to do so. It's public property, and we afford them that right to do that. But it's concerning from the world that we live in right now when a stranger is walking around a patrol car. You don't know what their intent is, and we try to assume that it's not nefarious, but we have to be realistic, and so it's difficult. So we do desperately need controlled access. We need controlled parking, or safe parking for both uniformed staff as well as non-uniformed. We also need what we call a sally port, where we could actually pull into a space and be able to bring somebody that we may have arrested or an interview, a victim of something that we don't want to parade around in public. We don't really have that ability as well. So we have to kind of turn away property, any type of found property. We're not able to actually take found property in as much as we used to be able to do that because we don't have space for it. So we take in evidence and that type of thing. Found property we can't take in. So I mentioned 2.5 years ago we started the process, put out an RFQ. Just sort of my notes here. Selected Croft. Space programming began, and what that was essentially that conversation that you sit down and show them every space. They walk around to everything, take measurements, and kind of see from there. But I'll let them talk about that. I will touch on what I know they will as well, is that we realized right away that maybe 10 years ago, we were capable of moving into a space like the old library from availability of square footage at the time, but we clearly had outgrown that. And so they helped us push the pause button to not go any further with something that just realistically we would be better off staying where we were, or where we are. And so we did that. We started talking internally with mayor and council, Eric, about we want to look at the idea of incorporating both courts and police in a public safety type of building, because City Hall and their staff are also kind of busting at the seams. That's kind of how this process really transpired into what you're looking at here today. So with that, unless you want me to touch on anything else, I'll let Maurice. I'll tee it up for you. So just some numbers, Ron. If you know me enough, I'm looking at all the familiar faces out here. I try to stay away from data because people start to nod off when I start throwing out data. But I'll tell you this. In the last 10 years, or 10 years ago, almost to the date, I went back and I looked at the actual annual review 10 years ago today. We actually had 25.4% less calls for service than we have today. Let's call it 25%. But 25% less calls for service. So again, I would say you just use that as just kind of this global police service requirement for the city. It's not exactly 25% increase collectively, globally, but if you go with that, then it makes a lot more sense as there's no way you can use that facility, and you're going to have more demand in the future, right? So if it's 25% now, what's it going to be 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years, so forth. So as Eric said, this is not a building for tomorrow or next week or next year. This is a 50-plus year building, in my opinion, that this is innovations and that type of thing that I think will stand the test of time. And so I'm going to end with one more thing, and I'll talk about that. Is that the mayor mentioned it, and Eric mentioned it as well. We want your input, especially when it comes to the point where we're actually designing this, because, again, it needs to look like Norcross. Most of you know, I grew up here. So the majority of my entire life here, family, just like the mayor, we've got family everywhere. So we've got a vested interest in how this is going to look, how it's going to be available to the public in certain circumstances and things of that nature. And I just simply, quite frankly, don't want a typical police department. I want something that's progressive to the extreme, if that's a thing. So your input is valuable when it comes to that. So what Maurice is going to talk about is a little bit of the increase in court demand and court cases and court trials that they have to have, but also additionally, his number of court cases and citations have gone up, and he'll talk about that. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Good night. Hello. I don't have the fun part. I'm not the fun department. So Chief has the fun. Chief goes out, officers go out, issue tickets. I process the tickets. So if someone hits you, they come see me. Right? So from budget year 18 to current year, tickets have went from 7,500 a year to almost 11,000. So right now, each clerk is handling anywhere from 440 tickets a month. So I pride in my department for efficiency and effectiveness. The reason why I do so is because court kind of holds a person's life at the click of a button, right? So you get a warrant for not coming to court, I have to release that warrant, either with you paying to release that warrant, or I have to release your license for you to go drive and things like that, of that sort. So the reason why I think my department is so good and necessary is to keep everyone safe. But I have the paper side of keeping everyone safe. Chief has the enforcement side of keeping everyone safe. So right now, I currently have to steal Chief's observation room in order to house a bilingual clerk that Mayor and Council approved me for last year. So we're working about 8 feet apart from each other. I have a staff of 4, I have a clerk 1, 2 clerk 2s, an assistant, and myself. The reason why we need more space is to become more efficient for the city of Norcross. About 50% of my tickets are not even Norcross residents. 30% of my tickets are not even licensed drivers, right? So it's necessary to have extra arraignments, which I added. This budget year, I add one extra arraignment a month so we can process these tickets. Yes, we may have drivers that are not licensed, but they're going through other things, immigration-wise, where they need these tickets closed to, change legal status and things like that to move forward with their lives. I take on the role, I'm a clerk that drives to other courts just to get different pros and cons. So last year, I drove around to 4 cities that built a new building, public safety building in the last 10 years. So I like to go around and see, like Lilburn, for example. They built a building about 7 to 8 years ago, and they didn't account for parking. So they had an increase of calls of service from the PD, but they're missing about 50 parking spots. So the reason why I drive around from city to city is to make sure that if the building is built, we can increase the service for everyone who gets a ticket in the city of Norcross. A lot of times, 50% of my tickets are paid online. I prefer people to come in to pay their tickets. When you get a ticket, just don't pay it and be done with it. I like for the public to come in to get the education aspect of a ticket, right? Since COVID, when you get 1 point on your license, premiums have been going up at least $2,000 every 6 months. So it's important for you to understand that there's steps to a ticket. You get a ticket, just don't pay it. Come on in, call in to figure out what you can do, because you'll be presented with more options in court. Just paying the ticket, especially if you have kids that are young drivers and they're on your insurance. I get a lot of calls from moms and dads. Hey, what can we do about this? Have your child come to court. It's important for your kids, for drivers, young drivers, old drivers to come to court to make sure they know what to do when they get a ticket. So if we're able to increase, currently I can assist, me and my staff can assist 2 people at the window at once. I want, if possible, for that service to increase. I think it's necessary for that service to increase. I had to use the chief's observation room to house my warrants, my tickets, and next door to that room I have supplies. By open records and retention, I have to keep at least 6 years of tickets next door to me, just in case anyone needs, information about tickets and such.
Good evening. Just in case you didn't catch it, my name is Earl Smith. I'm the business unit manager for Croft and local government. What that means is my team and myself, all we focus on is local government type projects. So this type of project was ideal for us. Just a little back history on some of the information on the existing library. When we were hired, again, as the chief mentioned, it was to renovate the existing library for a new police headquarters. The existing library is just over 10,000 square feet. There's approximately about 15,000 square feet of covered patio porch area that could be enclosed. So that was what we knew what we had to work with. And sitting down with the chief and his staff, we go through what we call a programming exercise. And that programming exercise is we meet with each of the departments within the police department and determine the amount of need and how they function together. So again, to make sure that we're capturing everything. We also, during that programming stage, want to think about the future, because we don't want to design a building for now that's going to be outdated as soon as we finish it. So we want to plan ahead and to accommodate expansion. So during that programming phase, it was discovered that Chief actually needed, again, with the window space included, needed about 21,000 square feet. So already you can see we have a problem right there. So we made that aware to the chief that, we obviously were concerned about the building and its size. Also, during the discovery phase, when we were walking through the building, we discovered that there were certain structural issues that the city was not aware of at the time. The building needed a new roof. It had a inferior exterior envelope, so that was going to need to be addressed. And it also had a parking lot that had some sinkholes due to some collapsing water lines. So all those things were going to be added costs in addition to trying to renovate a building that, again, wasn't going to be able to accommodate the police department's needs. During this process, we were asked again, we met Maurice and went through a programming exercise with him as well to determine the amount of court space that they actually needed. Came up with a number of roughly about a little over 33,000 square feet, which resulted in the plan that you see in front of us now, which wouldn't fit just on the library site. Some additional property had to be acquired in order to accommodate, one, the building and also the parking. On that site right now, we have parking that's secure for the police department so that they're protected from unsavory characters, and then also just general public parking. Security is always an important element also for the police and for the courts. We try to design in within the building and within the context of the site security measures that to the naked eye may not be visible, but is actually there to protect that building against possible attack. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Thank you.
I'm gonna wait till we get the slide up first.
So, can you roll the slide to the last two? Who has control?
My name is Ed Wall, and I'm Norcross's financial advisor. So I'm like their banker. And while she's getting that ready, I'll just give you all a little bit of background about Norcross. My name is Ed Wall, and I'm managing director of Piper Sandler. And I've been in the business for 38 years. I was born and raised in Milledgeville, Georgia. And I represent, I don't know, about 120 cities and counties and school boards across the state. Norcross is unique as far as one of my clients in that it has no debt. So Norcross has $1.5 million in debt that pays off June of 23. After that, it has no debt. The DDA has a $9 million bond issue for the parking deck next to the Brunswick, but it is being paid for by $600,000 a year in rent from the Brunswick itself for all those parking spaces. I'll give you an example. Sandy Springs has about $180 million in debt. Brookhaven, just up the road, has $60 million in debt, and they're about to issue another $180 million for a new city hall. Chamblee has about $100 million in debt. Here in Gwinnett, Duluth issued about, yes, that's it right there, about $60 million in debt for its downtown area. Lawrenceville has recently issued a lot of debt for its downtown area. Norcross has tried, ever since I've represented them, ever since I've known them, and I've been doing business in Gwinnett since 1984, to pay cash, and they save money and pay for projects with cash money. This project is no different. When Eric Johnson and the mayor first called me to come out and talk about the financing plan to build this project, we started off with how much cash can we get and make the debt as little as possible. Most of my clients don't approach it like that. You know, in Washington, they're having to raise the debt limit because we're at 31 trillion. So it's almost un-American not to have debt, but y'all don't like it. So in June, Norcross won't have any. Give you some statistics about Norcross. You have a $36 million budget here. And you have about a $2.7 billion value of all the property. Norcross only levies a 6.7 mil property tax rate. Give you an example, Decatur is about 20 mil. Hateville is 17 mil. College Park is 15 mil. City of South Fulton is 14 mil. You're only at 6. And the city is in great financial shape. It has cash reserves. And this project here, if you'll see at the top, it's a $20 million project, 33,000 square feet. Tell me what she told me. And so, I've got it on my laptop. There's a 33,000 square foot building, and the price is estimated at $20 million. Now that $20 million includes the building itself and fixtures, furniture, and all the equipment inside. The funding sources, the voters in Gwinnett in November approved the special purpose localized sales tax. We call it SPLOST. The voters actually had in the ballot question certain categories of Norcross SPLOST over the next 6 years. And one of the categories was facilities. $7.265 million will be collected over the next 6 years for facilities inside the city limits of Norcross. What the city mayor and council and the city staff would like to do is to reserve $1.265 million of that to renovate the existing space that the police department is using for other city purposes. So it will leave $6 million of sales tax that we'll collect over the next 6 years for this project itself. The other amount of money is Red Speed revenues. There's $5 million in cash that the city has banked up from that particular revenue source, and they've been purchasing the land with that cash money, and will still use the remaining part of the cash for the project itself. And so if you take those things together, it only leaves a balance of about $9 million to finance. The city of Norcross has an authority called the Urban Redevelopment Agency, a URA. Mayor and council itself are members of that URA. The URA will sell revenue bonds for 15 years, and annual payments on it is going to be about 800 grand. And so the city will use $1 million a year from SPLOST and $800,000 a year from other revenues of the city. It will not include property taxes to pay for the project. If Red Speed, which right now is collecting $3 million a year, we pay $1 million to the vendor, we net $2 million from it, and we'll continue to collect at that rate, we'll pay off the bonds in 7 years. So the city will once again be completely out of debt in 7 years. The thing that I like about that is most of us, when we buy a house, we get a 30-year mortgage. The city will essentially have a 7-year mortgage on this building, and that sort of fits with how Norcross looks at its finances. I could go to the next page, please, ma'am. This next page shows you the SPLOST portion. You can see the third column after the year is right about $1 million a year. You can see it'll produce $5.2 million for the project itself. And then you can see $10 million coming from the other 15-year bond issue. And you can see the payments there are $885,000 a year. If we collect $2 million a year, you can see we'll pay it off a lot sooner. The bonds will be sold with no prepayment penalties, so that you can pay it off at any time with no prepayment penalty. That's it, man. That's it.
Thank you, Ed, so much for this presentation. And thank you all the presenters who have given us some information that we can digest. And at this time, I know that you have a few questions, so what we'll do is I'll continue to moderate, but you'll raise your hand, and we'll bring a microphone to you, and you may ask those questions after being recognized. Anyone has questions at this time? We'll need a microphone to pick up where it's holding it.
Yeah, and the feeling. So Eric, you mentioned that you want to build a LEED building. Is that a requirement or a desire? Is my first question. And the second question is, why are we building a LEED building? It's a waste of money.
Well, I might look at some of my bosses here, but that's a standard that the city previously adopted, that any buildings we build will be LEED certified. So certainly this is your opportunity to raise a question, but that's the standard currently in place for the city.
So it is part of the law?
It's not part of the law. It's in, Tracy, where's Tracy's? Is it comp plan?
It can be overturned?
Mayor council can do anything they want to do.
Well, I would suggest that
Well, there's that.
Yeah, so I would suggest that you look seriously at that as a way to cut costs. We can build green buildings without doing LEED. LEED is a cumbersome process, very cumbersome process, and it does not pay for itself. We can go buy you a plaque tomorrow, you can hang a plaque in a building, but we should look at a green building without doing LEED.
Thank you so much for that.
Who else is gonna-
On the financial side of the presentation there, if I understood correctly, the bottom line is that the city would have it all paid off in 7 years. Is that basically what you were saying? When? Go ahead.
Let me give one qualifier. So this is like, think about taking to use Ed's example, taking a 30-year mortgage, not a 15-year mortgage, and then planning to pay it down early by making larger payments. The debt schedule that you've seen shows about an $880,000 annual payment for 15 years. But right now, we take in a little over $3 million a year, and that can come down. We recognize that the intent of Red Speed is to get people to drive slower, not to take in revenue. So we recognize that over time, that revenue stream might decline. So we're not over-promising how much of that money is available to pay for this. But right now, after we pay our fees for the firm that runs the cameras, after we're paying for some of the operations of the police department, we're taking in a little over $2 million net per year. And so to Ed's point, our plan would be, to the extent that we can afford to pay off early, we would try to pay that off early, and you could potentially pay it off in half the time, which will take out some of the interest expense. So we'll actually spend less, just as you would if you were paying off a 30-year mortgage by upping your payments every month.
Okay. That actually wasn't even the main
Well, I
thrust
just
of
want to
my
make sure we
question,
get
but
that point
that's
out, because
great
we're not
info.
guaranteeing we'll pay it off in 7.5 years,
Yep.
but we could.
So I guess to follow up on that, though, it sounds like that's kind of the realistic case is 7 years. The worst case scenario, it takes us 15 years. Is there a best case scenario that's even better than 7? 7's the best. Okay. So then where I was actually going with that is, how long is this going to take to build? If it was shovel ready today and we started construction, would it be 2 years before it is put in use, and then we've basically got 5 years of use before it's paid off after that point?
It would probably take about 18 to 20 months to build the building itself, so that it's occupiable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how far are we, do you think, if this was all approved today, from shovel in ground?
We're not even close. I mean,
Okay.
Everything that you see right now, as the mayor mentioned, is purely conceptual. There hasn't been a floor plan actually even drawn to even start doing anything like that.
So the 7-year clock to getting it all paid off, does that start with the approval, or like when, does that start when the shovel goes in the ground?
Well, the city wouldn't incur any construction costs till shovels start going into the ground.
Mhm.
I mean, there would be design costs up front that the city would incur, prior to that, but they would be pretty insignificant to the overall building cost.
Okay, so in theory, we've got even 2 or 3 years to continue to save up in advance and maybe not even finance quite as much of this in the first place.
Yeah, so to your point, and I was trying to get a disclosure when Ed scared me that he was going to promise you would be paid off in 7.5 years. But you know, to your point, there's various factors that you know at play. We could commit a little bit more than the $6 million if we needed to, because I don't know that we need a full $1.2 million to renovate City Hall or other projects. We potentially will have more of the Red Speed money accumulated by the time that's our funding source. That's what we had $5 million last August 30th available. We spent about $1 million of it to buy some parcels adjacent to the library so that we have the whole site under control. But we have the ability, as Earl said, we could start doing a design and spend cash, and the debt doesn't kick in until we actually need that for cash purposes. And so I think Ed is planning on the borrowing being next summer, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you all. Hey, there's a lovely lady here with a
Thank you. All right, so I have 2 related questions. The first is, when we had the Buford Highway Master Plan session up in Lawrenceville last summer, I believe it was, we talked about having roughly $34 million in bond capacity. The way that the numbers are broken out here, it's kind of by year. I want a hard number. How much of that capacity is this taking up, if any? And so that's my first question. Great, and this has nothing to do with, this is not going to have an impact on Norcross Development Authority or the Downtown Development Authority that may have other ideas about potential bond capacity in the future. That's my question, thank you very much. Other question is, when you talk about total projected, and then in parentheses, preliminary cost is 20 million. In your experience, how much does that go up by the end? Like, what are we talking here? Are we talking another million, another 5 million? What's your experience with that, please?
Well, right now, we obviously have a very volatile construction market without, during the pandemic. So construction costs have soared. We are seeing, though, in the market where prices are starting to stabilize. They're never going to go back to pre-pandemic prices because everybody's used to paying that, so they're not going to go back down. What we're hoping and what we're starting to see is more leveling of those costs where they're not just constantly escalating. We're running into projects now where previously contractors, general contractors, were having problems with subcontractors even holding prices more than 10 days. Normally they hold them 60 days to ensure they can lock them in. That's starting to ease up a little bit as well. Subcontractors are starting to look ahead and see that they need that work, so they're starting to loosen up on some of those restrictions. We still have material shortages, which is something that we'll have to overcome, but there are means to do that as well to make sure that the project runs smoothly when we start construction.
You're projecting 20 million now. You can see we are already, as a staff, putting in what you're talking about.
Question, front row.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Last year, we are on the corner of Stevens Road and Beaufort Highway where all this activity will be. And last year we were approached by the city, and that put us in a kind of tremendous pressure for us, on us physically, mentally, to look for other businesses or location to relocate our business. I'm just wondering, what was the plan at that time? Because then the city backed off, and they said that there's no need for acquiring our property. So what was the plan 9 months ago and today, if I may ask? Well, because it did, to be honest with you, it put us for about 4 months on a daily mental, physical, and financial pressure that we are still dealing with. Am I correct? Yes. We are still dealing with that. So we are wondering what was the plan 9 months ago versus now. And I did have the. No, I even went and talked to Mr. O'Brien, and so. But we understand that.
Yeah,
You don't do that.
yeah.
There, you want to say something? You want me to say something?
Well, of course, when the city approached you, this was in keeping with our efforts toward developing Beaufort Highway. And I believe that you were approached by our attorneys relative to your property. I think you asked way too much for your piece of property, and I apologize if you felt restrained. But the city's in the process of, like I said, expanding Beaufort Highway and looking toward future development, and that's when the inquiry took place. I think you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think it's important for all our community that may not know the details of that. We passed the Beaufort Highway Master Plan, and there's lots of things that we want to consider as a community and we want to consider as a council. And what's important to us is to explore all options. And so that was a potential option for us, and we are good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and so we decided it was a better option to develop a plan that kind of fits into the plan of what you see on these boards today. So you may see that. I can't promise in the future, and I don't think anyone here can promise in the future what future councils will anticipate coming to you or coming to any person in our community in terms of property, but we owe it to our community, we owe it to our citizens, our businesses, to continue to look for the best opportunity to service our community. So that's essentially in a nutshell what that potential process was about.
Place to relocate that business that we've been there for 25 years. A quarter of a century is not something that it comes overnight. We built it with our sweat and our blood. And the way that the city approached us, I think it was somehow it was hard approach. Let's put it this way.
And I think we'll take in that feedback, and we'll make sure that in the future we understand that.
I don't sound like I'm complaining, but it is a concern that I would like to see it for the future. It doesn't happen to someone in our position.
If you bring the microphone, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I've been watching this for a little bit, and I see
please
that.
Stand, please. So we can,
Say it again?
please stand so we can record.
Yeah, you can record me.
Okay.
Either way. I see that there was some ideas of possibly blocking off Stevens and Peachtree. Just wanted to know if there was anything turning that into a dead end or not through street the way it is now. Is that something that's working on?
Yeah, I think if you were to look at some of the drawings we had up earlier, you will see that Stevens has a circle now where it goes straight through the Buford Highway today. On our drawings, it anticipates that end, it turns into a dead end, based on the drawings we have.
So which side is going to turn into the dead end? I think Eric had it. So the Buford Highway side is going to be dead end.
So Stevens will not be a through street. So Stevens will, from Buford Highway,
You're not going to be able to enter Buford Highway from Stevens Street.
that's correct. That's correct.
Just from a builder side of things, I hear you guys budgeting about $600 a foot for a new building. I imagine it's probably going to be one of the nicest buildings, probably in the state, possibly the country at that price. 20 million divided by 33,000 is $606 a foot. Okay. I was just wondering, I mean, if you did, I don't really have a, in this fight now. Just going through renovation processes, I mean, $600, even if you did $200 a foot on a renovation, can go pretty far. I was just wondering, I know you mentioned that you said there were some underground leaks and some other minor issues that prompted a new building instead of a renovation. Personally, in my experience, underground leaks have never held us back from a renovation. I was just wondering what the renovation costs were coming out to be versus the new construction costs we have. You've seen the $20 million budget. Just curious to know what the renovation cost budget was had you gone down that route.
Yeah, there was several million, but it wasn't necessarily the underground or the condition of the existing building that completely deterred this project, and we decided that we should hit a pause on it. It was more that the program square footage was going to exceed that building's allowable that it would occupy.
By about 9,000 feet.
Yeah. So, I mean, what it would have done, it would have just put a Band-Aid on the situation. It wouldn't actually solve any problem.
Well, it was 12,000 and we need 33,000, so.
Well, 33,000 was for the courts and the buildings.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, if you look, part of what we're trying to do is to fit a partial two-story, partial one-story building on that site. And so part of the challenge is the building that's there wasn't designed to go vertical. So trying to put a second floor on a one-story building. So appreciate your point. We went through a lot of early soul searching because we like to squeeze a nickel as much as I think anyone. The challenge there was the condition of the building, the location of the building. The one thing that we haven't shared is we can't put a building on Stevens. And the reason for that is there's a 20-inch water main that runs under Stevens. There's a sewer line that runs under Stevens. There's a 6-inch local water line that runs under Stevens. It's our road, but those are all county utilities that would need to be relocated if we were to use any of the Stevens footprint for the footprint of the building. So that's why you see a design that looks at putting the building on the same side of the property that currently is occupied by that one-story library, and putting a lot of the parking on the other side of Stevens where we've acquired some additional property to ensure we have it. But we understand your point. No, but we started with the idea of renovation. That certainly was the mayor mentioned. That was the original plan.
Good evening. So first of all, I don't have a doubt that the police need more space. But when you talk about safety, it's coming to my attention, what about emergency? How much you thought about emergency for the citizen? Because we don't have shelter. But
What was the last part of your question?
that we don't have shelter in any emergency capacity in our area.
You mean emergency shelter space for citizens?
Yes. I want you to answer me just a moment. Okay, let me finish with them. Thank you. Other thinking is we spent already 4 million and 6 million from the county, that is our tax, that we didn't need to spend about the new library. It started here. No one had, as a citizen, connect with Bill before today. Because we didn't know about the last 2 years. You didn't have any asking the citizen to be with him. I don't say that all my opinion is right, it's always wrong. I don't care about it, what we choose in the end. But I need a discussion, and we didn't have it in the last 2 years. Yes, I was high, so what? But still, nobody asked it. We have here opportunity to look if this is the right place. Maybe Mitchell Road is the right place. We have a space that belongs to us. Maybe it will cost us less. Maybe we will sell the other property for office or other use. Because it's no different between this space to Beaufort Highway to go out and the other space. It's not a big difference. It's a light. There is no light there, actually. So it's much more safety for the other people. And less accident. So I have a lot of questions. I understand how much it's cost and all of that. The other thought was, and we talk about it, and we have only you as the mayor, and the other city council is not here. In 2014, when it was supposed to bring here the library, we are 9 years ago, the mayor and I opened my mouth and say, why you choose architect, and I'm not against you, it's general, and not to have competition inside of design and mastermind about things. We can have competition, and with competition we get great results. And to give everyone, you choose 22 from them, it's not like you see the vision and then you choose. By that I see only one vision. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I want to see other vision. So that's what I want to see. Community, people, involvement, the chief that we lost 2 years about it, and competition with architects, and not to choose what they did already. They are not from Gwynedd.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Any other questions?
My name is Bob Eagley. I'm the lot. I built my own house right next to this place. And it's our retirement home. We built it for the whole ride. But she made a really good point. I'd like to get back to her point. Why there? I didn't think about that. There is other lots. There are other locations. That's something that if you could answer that question, I would do it too, really well.
Well, I'll lead off until I see someone else raise their hand, but we actually did look at other locations. I think that with the Beaufort Highway Master Plan, the vision was to develop in that corridor. We have people that come to court that rely on transit in some cases. In one case, we unfortunately had someone come from Atlanta on MARTA and walk from Doraville to arrive in court. But part of this is finding a location that, to the gentleman's question, just to show that I'm concerned about cost, what it would cost to acquire land. We certainly could have looked at selling off the library site and going to a different location. And we did explore some additional ones with some assistance of our economic development director and others to look at the possibility. I think the chief can address the fact that this location actually in part is preferable because there's not a traffic signal there. That actually makes it better for us to be able to pull law enforcement vehicles out of that location. And we're trying to stress the fact that we haven't finalized anything. We're giving you some concepts to show how this might work on that site and to get the feedback on whether you like the look of a building or one that looks totally different or a different layout. But the site plan that is there back in the corner, and we've got copies out here if you didn't get one when you came in, we have a back way out for the police as well on Stevens, and that's intended for your concern, Bob, is that there's a gate there that would only allow those with access through that control gate to get in, but that allows the police department to exit that facility going up Stevens towards West Norcross, in addition to having that direct access to our property down to Buford Highway to be able to serve East Norcross. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Well, I do want to add, and I'm going to quote Lieutenant Beasley because he's still back there. There's no crime at the police department. So the police officers don't stay at the police department. They have zone. We have 3 zones in the city. They're assigned to a zone, and that's where they patrol. So it's not in fact, in reality, the police department could be outside of the city. It doesn't really matter. They patrol their zone. So they don't stay in the police department and then get dispatched out. So I just want to clarify that. Emergency shelters, real quick. All of Gwinnett County schools are emergency shelters. They're set up that way. That's part of our emergency management plan. We actually have, somebody tell me, I think we have 6 or 4 elementary schools that are designated that here in the city. I'm sorry? Oh goodness, I don't know. I think we would probably have to get that from Gwinnett County, but I would say it's fairly substantial because they are elementary schools. There was one about the number of people that put in, or another number of firms that put in. I mentioned there was 22 firms that put in for it. We selected, really we came down to is the one that had the most experience doing this type of work, and that was Croft. So that was location.
Buford Highway, we put a lot of money and an effort into designing a plan for redevelopment of Buford Highway. It's really part of our vision to have a major presence on Buford Highway so that we're seen by the community, particularly those that might be thinking about breaking the law. There's quite a few extended stay motels not very far from where we're going to put this. They might put this police department. These all went into the thinking. Yeah, we could have put it on Mitchell Road, but it would have been off in a corner, way off to the side. It wouldn't have been in the present, visible, maybe crime-appropriate location as what we're looking at here. So a lot of this discussion has been happening, and I think Buford Highway is a great place to have a large public safety building that people drive by. 45,000 cars a day drive by and see that Norcross has got a tremendous police presence within the city, and probably wouldn't be a good idea to break the law.
How can people see when the policeman is high? It's a high level. Nobody can see. How? If it's not in the same level when you're driving, you are in this level. Is it going to be down to the level of the Buford Highway?
Yeah.
That's the plan?
Yeah, I think, we always have a challenge with topography. We live in Georgia, we're in the foothills of the Appalachians, so you're going to have topography issues no matter what you do. We do see that if we look at our current elevation compared to Buford Highway, we're significantly higher than it today. And really, honestly, our police department is tucked away. But I think, as the chief said, our police departments patrol areas or districts or zones. So they're always going to be there. To answer your question in terms of locations, I think that's an important question for our community to understand. We explored, as Mayor Pro Tem Bruce Gaynor mentioned, we explored numerous options, and we looked at cost, we looked at service, we looked at our Buford Highway master plan and how we helped realize that plan that we approved with our community input. And all of that went into play in terms of how we decided this would potentially be an optimal location for that. Cost is a big factor of it. Having part of this land already ours based on the library exchange that was done in previous councils was another component of that. Its proximity, if you were to look at the Norcross map, this technically moves our public safety building closer to the center of the city. What, just from a proximity standpoint, gives a lot more visibility and opportunity and access to other parts of the community, not just our historic Norcross community. So we took a lot of those things into consideration. We'll continue to take your feedback into consideration. And as far as, discussions and talk, before we pulled the trigger on anything, as you've heard, we wanted to have this meeting, and that's why we're here to hear your feedback, hear your comments, so we can make some of those iterative changes as we go through the process. And I know we personally talked about the library and design, et cetera. That was predominantly the county. And in this case, I'd like to hear the feedback from the community in terms of what that building would look like. I think the chief mentioned that we want a progressive look that's going to last us into the future, and we're interested in hearing your feedback in terms of how we can do that, but also be cost effective as well in meeting our community guidelines in terms of being a sustainable city. So I think we try to take all those in consideration, but no decisions have been made other than hearing feedback from you is one of our first key spots.
Did you have a chance to think about Mitchell, that it's our property here down?
Yeah.
Did you ever thought about it?
Yeah, I can confirm we thought not only Mitchell, but we thought numerous other locations.
This belongs to us.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay. But here you're going to buy another property that will cost us more money. How much more? Is it in the plan?
Yeah, I think those are already, we've already made those decisions. So that,
you already choose to buy.
Yeah, for those particular lots.
So it's like why we are here.
Yeah. I mean,
because I heard yesterday that it's not. It's only proposal.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of hands up. I want to be respectful for the rest of the community as well.
Councilmember Bear, I think you had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two questions that are being relayed from somebody watching us from live stream. One of the questions is, have we put any thought into pedestrian access across Beaufort Highway right in front of the facility so that folks from all over can get to it safely? And the other question was, the chief had mentioned that there was going to be more focus on, I'm trying to think how you put it, but it was about engaging the community, community engagement opportunities. Could you expand a little bit about, I know we already do things like the police academy and so on, but what are some other things that you plan?
Great questions. And the first one is easy. It is in the long list of things that we need to look at as far as access goes. Someone mentioned the bus route. It was right on the bus route, but there's two stops. There's one on each side. How do you make that work? So it would be something that we would need to look at. The engineer by any, but it's on the list. It's not something that's been forgotten. That's really all I can say at this point. The second thing about what we're calling a multi-purpose facility. So obviously you have the administrative part of a police department that you have to do to get things done, your equipment, your staff, your offices, and so forth. But I've, as Maurice has done, I've been to about 3 dozen over the last 2 years. There's about 3 dozen police departments. I've wrote them all down, and the good and the bad from all these police departments. Some are old, mostly new. Most of the ones are new. And nobody has this. Nobody has this ability to almost kind of make a room, a large room, a couple times maybe even the size of this room, accessible to the public in a way that they're not really getting into the police department. They're not really getting into the courts. But part of that, in my limited vision, is where you can host just about anything. Anything imaginable, you could host that. Not just police training, but I would even say small conferences. I've spoken to the Latin American Association about events that they hold. They don't have a space to do that. Well, why not in a place like this where somebody would feel safe? There's other things like the e-commerce that just continues to grow and things of that nature. Why not have a facility where they could just literally have that exchange happen inside of the police department? Although we offer it now, but in a facility where it's open for that, they know it's recorded, they know it's audio and video recorded. And I've got a whole list of things that, again, these are just my ideas of how to be able to do that. One of the things that I've told the architectural firm is I want to be able to have a basketball court. I know that's somewhat of a touchy subject, but why not? Why not be able to do an indoor basketball court? Things that you can transform. The church I grew up in was I don't know what it was called, but you could do that. You could have a church service, and about an hour later, you'd be playing basketball because we did it. So things of that nature is what I'm thinking. These are, it's an open space, so it's not cost. The cost wouldn't go extremely high for that type of thing, but we should be able to use this as a police multi-purpose, courts multi-purpose, but also maybe a community outreach, community facility, community rec center, things of that nature. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too far, but that's the answer to that question. And I would welcome anyone who has any experience in that at all. I've yet to find someone who has any experience in that, but my office is over here, so if anyone wants to jump in, I would love it.
Big comments. Bob, I think you have a question?
Right. First of all, thank you, because you guys have been very open. Because I'm the residence right next door, and apparently he is too. So we are very appreciative of you guys being so forthcoming. I still have questions, I know it's not time, about light trespassing. It's a big deal. The temple lit up the side of their temple one night and kept it on all night. Now they shut it down at night. And so we'll be asking you more questions about that. And drainage. Ed, sorry, you're back on. This bond, you showed a spreadsheet and it had interest. Is this interest going to be fixed, floating? Are we going to insure it to get a better rate? Is there going to be a sinking fund? How's that going to be well?
There'll be a fixed rate for 15 years at 3.73%. Now that's what it is today. The Fed's going to continue to raise rates. I don't know what it is when we finally sell bonds, but it's a fixed rate for 15 years. You talk about insurance, you used to go with MBIA or AMBAC and get a policy of municipal bond insurance, and the 2008 crash wiped all that out. And so none of them have a AAA rating anymore. I think there are 2 of them in the marketplace now that have a AA credit rating. It would not benefit the city to buy a policy of municipal bond insurance like it would before the 2008 crash. And so it's fixed rate.
Just a quick thought. I know that everybody here has a little love for Norcross, otherwise you wouldn't be here, especially historic Norcross. I was just wondering, what are the possibilities of having this building somewhat have an architectural resemblance of some of the historic homes and properties in the neighborhood? It is a beautiful building. The renderings look great. But I was just wondering, like, when you look at this, you can tell this is a 2020 plus type product versus trying to blend into some of the history that the city has. I mean, I know the restaurants are doing, a little bit of some good things going on, and some of the other stuff down on the main street, coffee shops. And is there any way to have this somewhat blend with that to give it a little bit more of that historic Norcross vibe and love?
I think Councilmember Beer can respond to that. Also, one more thing, at 3.3% on your interest rate, please sign me up, because, God, we haven't seen that in like 2 years, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm thrilled that you mentioned that, because when I saw the drawings for this, that was the first thing that I sent back to the city manager. Is I recognize the mayor talking about a building that's going to look good for 50 years, and so I can appreciate that. But I'm with you. I would love to have some kind of an architectural element to this that had a Norcross feel to it. So what we have up here is it's something that we're looking for input on. So we appreciate that input.
One thing, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, cities and counties and schools or governmental buildings can sell tax-exempt bonds. What that means is that the interest that they pay is exempt from federal and state income tax. So the interest rate they pay is lower than what you and I can, because the interest we pay to whomever we pay it, they have to pay federal or state income tax on it. So that's why that interest rate is so much lower than what you and I can do. So how you get to the tax equivalent?
What is the actual Fed rate right now today?
They're trying to do a range between 4.5% to 4.75% with the 0.25% raise they made yesterday.
Right, and I mean, we hope no more rates, but there's probably going to be a couple more increases over the next couple of
But-
quarters.
but
So you're anticipating a full point and change below the current rate.
And the reason why the Fed rate is a taxable rate, the city can issue tax exempt bonds.
Learned something new tonight.
Yes, sir, thank you.
DDA Chair, Jim Iyer, you had a question?
I'm not here as DDA, I'm here as Jim Iyer. Couple questions, comments. It'd be nice to have a roundabout at your four-way intersection, people coming off Beaufort Highway, going to be coming at a rate of speed. Access to Stevens, for those of us on this side of Beaufort Highway, it would be nice to have access so we're not having to go out on the Beaufort Highway to get back into the police station, even if it's a circuitous route, so they're not using it as a cut-through, but to provide vehicular access from the cul-de-sac, not just for the police officers, but also for the general public who are coming in from the back door. And then third, with all due respect, I'm hearing a lot of mixed messages here tonight. The one that confuses me the most is I can't figure out whether we're building a police and municipal court building with a community center, we're building a community center with a police and municipal court attached to it. The thing that, when I came in, William asked me what I thought. I said, it's a great looking building, but there's 4 or 5 police cars there in that lobby. And if you do it standard, that's 5 or 6 police cars and a couple officers that you're going to pay for to do that community space. It really should be just an entry to the courts and an entry to the police department. If you want to do a community center, great idea. Let's do it somewhere else. Let's keep focused on what we're doing, and let's do it in a way that we can save money and put the money where it needs to be in police cars, police officers, and those things that are, or another courtroom that are being used instead of putting them in the building. Thank you.
So briefly on that, so when we have training, I did not detail this well enough, so I apologize for that. But when we have training just for our officers and staff, we do it in this room right here, and because we have to have the space to be able to do that. So regardless of what the facility would have, the room would have for police, there's so much time that it sits there unused, and that's how I should have said this. So and my thinking is, why would we let a space just sit there unused at night or perhaps weekends or some other time? So I'm not saying that we're holding festivals in it or anything like that, but I am saying that it's something that I think the community needs to have access to. The Boys and Girls Club has reached out to us in the past to say, hey, do you have any places where we could go do different things, because everything they do is there, and they get kind of bored with it with kids. So just ideas is really all this is.
It doesn't need to be a 3-story lobby with a full glass enclosure that is going to be very difficult to heat and cool.
So that's not, you were talking 2 separate spaces. That's just a concept plan for the entrance. That's not a multi-purpose room. The multi-purpose room is actually, I think what we decided was behind that, 1 story behind that.
It occurs to me that policing is obviously evolving all the time. You're constantly learning new things and taking different approaches. There's been a recent push for more mental health consultants and things like that. Data analysts might become a thing. How much space are we allocating or looking to allocate in this for the unknown? For what's going to happen over the next 10, 20, 30 years of new positions, new ways of integrating the police with the community outreach operations, those sorts of functions that may or may not be large parts of the department at this point.
I'll let Earl, if you don't mind, talk about kind of expansion.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, when we did the programming, we allowed for some future growth. What that future growth is, nobody knows. But nobody can predict, like you said, what's going to be needed in the future for as far as police to be able to handle those types of situations. So, but we want to make sure that the building is large enough to accommodate that future growth, so it's all of a sudden not going to be outdated as soon as it's completed. So We planned for some of that. We don't know exactly what that will be.
Got a question here.
Reiterate what Jim said. I mean, here's the perfect room. You got a community room right here. Why can't the Boys and Girls Club use that? Why can't you continue to use this for your training? At $500 a square foot, this is an expensive piece of property right here we're sitting on.
And I said earlier, we can continue doing exactly what we're doing. It's cumbersome. The cumbersome part of this particular room is we're on the same list as everyone else who needs to use it. And again, that sounds kind of whiny or complaining, but it's a reality that we can only have at certain times of the year and certain times of the certain months, and we're confined by that. But again, I don't want anybody to think that we won't continue doing what we're doing. It's just we can do better. We can do better, and that would help.
Cheek. You bet your ass.
Would you pass the microphone?
So my question to you, Errol, from South. You did the Acro Police Department, the Acro City. Acro.
Oh, Acro.
Yeah. So my question, how many square feet they have? And you finish it in what year? And how much it would cost?
Well, cost is really irrelevant since it was finished so long ago. It was actually 4 years old. So its cost was obviously pre-pandemic. So its numbers are significantly lower than anything that's now. I'm sorry? I don't know what the actual cost of that project was off the top of my head, and I don't actually know the total square footage. I do know that we're in the process of doing some renovation in that space for their police department. Yes, but it was planned for growth, so that renovation is taking up some of the planned future space. So it's not expanding the footprint of that building, it's just working within the footprint of the existing building.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, I did reserve some time for council. If council had any questions at this time, we do want to be respectful of everyone's time here. Councilmember Beer?
You know, I just wanted to talk for a second because I don't want to leave this sort of undone here. We're in a rough spot when it comes to police, conversation about police in America. Pretty much whatever I'm saying right now, somebody's going to get upset. So I'm just throwing it out there. So, you know, the police are here to, at least for me, they're here to keep order, and they're here to make it to where folks can go to sleep at night, and they're here to where families are kept safe. And but how we go about that, to Eric's point, is evolving. And you know, we've heard about community policing. I don't even know if that's in vogue right now or not, but
it is.
It is, okay. Things change so fast from day to day. But I think what the chief is and what our city manager is getting at here, I think, is very important, because I think what they're trying to talk about is how it's not just about policing. It's about being a part of the community, and it's about being a servant to the community, and it's about trying to figure out how you can engage with the community. And so, you know, I think that's something that I'm very, very grateful for our chief for doing a good job, and his officers for doing a good job at. And it's a priority for me as a council member. I'm not going to apologize for it. It is a priority for me that our police engage with the community, that the community knows who they are, that the community is not fearful of them. You know, we're very proud to have a very diverse community in Norcross, and there's a lot of folks that come from communities where the police are not trusted. And so we have to go above and beyond. We have to go above and beyond. We have to invest more to make sure that our policing connects with the community. And so, you know, the council's been very intentional about this, and the council's intentional about protecting our community. And so, you know, the decisions that have gotten us to where we are right now are because we support our chief, and we believe in his vision, and we support our Norcross city officers. So I just wanted to make that comment. You know, this is not about playing basketball down at City Hall, but this is absolutely about connecting with our citizens and about letting them know that our police are there to serve them and to protect them. And we mean that.
Very good. Any other council comment? Councilmember Myers.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Councilman Bear, and I wrote some notes, and I was going to say exactly that. You know, just to pivot the conversation a little bit, this building is for our community, but it's also for our staff and our police officers that protect our community. So part of what we look at and what we want to feedback on is how we can make it comfortable for them, how we can make sure that they're engaged in our community, how can we make sure that they are retained within our community. We face this, I think everyone has faced this in the corporate America today. People are hopping jobs left and right. To have someone, Officer Beasley, 23 years that's unique today. And so making sure we have areas that's comfortable for our community, make sure it's comfortable for our police officers and our staff is another key factor that we look at not just the building, but what we do in that building and how we put that building together. So again, this is all conceptual. We're thinking about it. We're talking about it. We're engaging our community, and we'd love to hear your feedback. And this is a great dialogue and conversation. I know it won't be the last of it, but we want to input that in what we build for our community. But we're also going to be listening to our staff and our police officers and what the next generation of police officers are going to look like and what they're going to need to be successful. Gen Z, the kids that are in high school today or in middle school and elementary school who will be police officers in 30, 40 years. Those are the individuals we also are building this building for. So we're having to think kind of for today, how do we retain what we have in this kind of inflationary job hopping market, as well as what will the future look like. We're trying to, without a crystal ball, we're trying to figure out how to fit that all in together. And so those are some of the complexities of designing something that's supposed to last 50, 60, maybe longer years.
Councilmember Gaynor.
Just to piggyback on what my two colleagues have mentioned here, connecting to the community is very important to all of us. Also, we've had a lot of conversation lately about compensation for officers and working conditions for officers. Working conditions go beyond just the, do I have a good car to drive, which we endeavored to make sure the officers have newer vehicles. But it also is the community commitment to policing. It's a big deal for the staff to understand that the community is behind them and is putting their resources into facilities that are first-class facilities for their benefit so that they can do their jobs better and that they're not enticed going to some other community that looks better, looks more shiny on the hill. It's important for us to both compensate our officers fairly, but also to provide them with working conditions that are above and beyond what our competitors, essentially our competitors are other cities in Gwinnett County. We want to make sure that they would rather be working here because the community is really behind them. This is a good example as to why why we're going to do that.
Very good. Very good. Before we close out council, do we have any other technical questions posed at this time? Well, again, I want to thank everyone for taking time of your busy schedules to be here. We have recorded the session. Staff has recorded your responses and your questions, and we intend to take all of your questions, your inquiries, and your comments and your statements to heart as we continue to move forward with this project. And I'd just like to say that I like the direction that we're headed in. I think agencies all over, not just Norcross, but if you look at what's happening in Atlanta with the new move of the mayor there and trying to better connect to communities, because Without the connection to the communities, our policemen can't do the job that they need to do. I think I'm a product of community policing. I guess I'm dating myself, but 50 years ago, I was sitting in the back of a police car. Not because I did anything wrong, is because Chief Grady Simpson he must have been the father of community policing, because he would go to the communities, meet all the families, talk to the kids, keep us off the street, and keep us out of trouble. And I think that meant a lot to me, and I think that meant a lot to the city of Norcross, because I think those types of traditions are continuing today, because I see our officers befriending our citizens all over the place. I was joyous to see the birthday roll-up that our police did for some of our seniors during COVID. You don't know, that meant, yes, that meant the world to them during this period of time. So things like that, I know maybe all of us don't appreciate it, but I think most of us understand that those additional eyes on the street are provided by those who have trust and who have faith in our police department. So having said that, I want to thank everybody for being here, and we appreciate your comments, and thank you so much. Good comments. Turn that off.